like say for example, like I come into class and I see them writing, I'm like, oh okay, I need to start writing that as well. But if I stay away from that, like oh I don't have to write, no one's writing, then I don't have to do it. Because you learn how to do it on it by yourself.
Yeah. But my concern is that I've talked a bit in the past week and a half or so about the need for isolation to become yourself. And then we see this and we just kind of go, it's what Scanlon keeps talking about. And it's not though. We need to read the words in the order in which they're printed. So what comes along with becoming an individual. Not what leads to becoming an individual, what goes along with becoming an individual. It says it right there on the screen, I'm asking you. What's this? Complete what? Isolation. This isn't necessarily advice on how to become an individual. It says that becoming an individual goes along with these things. These things go along with being an individual. So isolation is how do you become an individual? Isolation, true. And Michael's absolutely right. We have to begin with where we are. And where we are is the person that we are when we start asking ourselves these questions. And that means all of the influences that you carry along with you, all of the experiences that you carry along with you. That's what makes deep self-analysis so difficult. Because it's a process of unraveling all of that. It isn't enough just to say, well, I am who I am. But I'm going to take who I am now and move forward with that. No, you've got to know who you are first to know why you are the way that you are. So otherwise, all of those things that go along with you, the prejudices and the biases, and these aren't necessarily negative things, but the prejudices and the biases that make up your personality are going to determine how it is that you see and experience the things that you're going to experience in the process of becoming an individual. But that means it's a process of separating yourself from society as much as you possibly can. Now, I don't know if any of you are all ready to go and move to the mountains and live by yourself for 7 years, like Zarathustra, or if you even have the skill set to do that. But assuming that you're not, what can you do? Well, you do as much as you can to disengage from those kinds of influences. And then disengaging from the influences isn't enough. It also means having to do the work of self-analysis, which is the hard part. Because it's difficult for us to work these things out, especially if we don't know how to. But now what happens if you become an individual? You become isolated. It isn't, it's a reciprocal thing. Remember the example that we talked about with the allegory of the cave. The individual who is liberated from the cave, goes out, experiences the real world, and then comes back down. Why? Well, because they've been forever changed. They can't go back to where they were before and be the same way. You can't follow that. You can't, the example that we used about taking the helicopter over to Brazil and taking the person out of the village and then returning them, that person can't go back to who they were before. Everything that they experience now within that village, even though they've experienced it before from a different mindset, because their mindset has changed so much, they're going to view everything from there forward through that lens of knowing things that they wouldn't otherwise have known. It's a matter of having to, it's a matter of not being able to unsee the things that you've seen before, but being able to understand why you saw them that way, and through this new lens, then move forward, interpret the world. But it's an ongoing process. You can't just kind of decide and say, well, here's the lens through which to see the world, and then I'm going to interpret everything through that lens. Well, that's just ideology. An ideology is nothing more than a shortcut to thinking. And this is why if you meet someone who's possessed by ideology, you know it. This is a person who's going to look at everything in the world in a certain way to even bend it to make it fit what they already kind of believe. And again, this is easy for us to look at others and say, other people do that. No, many of us do that. The only people who don't do that, well, even some still do, but the people who go through a deep process of self-analysis. So now, you go out of the cave. You come back down. Now, who are your friends when you're back inside the cave? Think back to the allegory. Who are the former prisoners' friends? I mean, they're friends when they're back down there.
The people that chained up.
Are the people who chained up? Are the people who are chained up his friends? No. What do they say they want to do to this person? Kill them. If somebody wants to kill you, they are not your friend. Now again, I'm telling you right now, I won't give you advice unless you ask for it, but there's a piece of advice. Somebody who wants to kill you is not your friend. So I'll ask again. Don't look for the answer you think I'm trying to get out of you. Give the actual answer. That person now leaves the cave, comes back. Who are his friends back in the cave? Nobody. He has no friends down there because nobody can relate to him in these ways. He has seen things that are indescribable. That person who leaves the village and comes back, he's still got people around him in the village, but I don't know how many of them are going to be inviting him over to their houses for dinner for very long, because that's a difficult person to be around, a person who has seen things and comes back. Some of you are going to struggle with this yourself, where you're going to, after high school, you may leave National City, you may go experience other things, and then you may come back and try to talk to your old friends from school, and you're going to realize and go, oh my goodness, I've got nothing in common with this person. You know? I was just listening to a friend of mine was saying that when she was in, I think she said it was kindergarten if I'm not mistaken, or preschool or kindergarten, that she had a friend who they were very good friends, you know, and they were inseparable for a while. Then they had a bit of a falling out, but then they came back together again. And then my friend had their lives went separate ways, and then they reconnected through social media. And my friend had a daughter, and then they ended up meeting up, and she says, "Oh my gosh, your daughter looks exactly like you when you were her age," and all these things. And then they sat around and they tried talking, and they had nothing to talk about. And that's when you're kind of like, "Okay, well, hey, good seeing you. Yeah, good seeing you too. We should do this again sometime. Oh yeah. Yeah, and you really have no intention of doing it. You know, remember, lying isn't just saying what's true. Lying is also lying isn't just saying what isn't true. It's also saying more than what's true. Oh, we should get together again soon. Oh yeah. But that's because they've both changed in these ways that it becomes difficult to relate. Becoming an individual for a lot of people makes it difficult to go back and relate to people who are not. You have to really check yourself. The same way that highly intelligent people really have to check themselves. Because you become convinced, oh, everybody else is stupid. You know, I'm going to go become an individual. Oh, everybody else is a sheep. Even if they are, so what? Why does that bother you so much? You know, if it's not you, it's not you. There's no reason it has to irritate you unless you see something in them that embarrasses you about your own past. And then maybe that's why we get angry about that kind of stuff. But it certainly leads to becoming an individual, and becoming an individual certainly leads to you being isolated from everybody else because, I mean, again, who are God's friends? With whom do the gods commune except for other gods? So maybe you're going to do that. You're going to come across other individuals, and then you're going to be intrigued by them. You'll be interested in talking with them. But there's a danger there, of course, also, that you just end up forming another group with them, and then you all begin conforming to each other as well. So again, it's that process of analysis. You know, if I asked you at the end of his life, who were Socrates' friends? He didn't have many. He had a lot of students. He had people who admired him. He has lots of people, millions of people around the world today who admire him. But he didn't have a whole lot of friends. If I asked you who Diogenes' friends were, he didn't have a lot of friends. Individuals are like uncompromising people. They're a lot of fun to be around. But you can't be around them forever because they're hard to get along with. You know? The true process then is not a sense of like, if I become an individual, I have to give up all of this. No, I think that might be where the wisdom is. That if you can figure out how to be an individual and then not lose those individual parts of yourself, but still be able to relate to your old friends. And then you're not to lose those parts of yourself. And your old friends will be able to relate to you, hopefully at that level, hopefully. And then you can kind of carry on your life and kind of, not necessarily all things to all people, but something like that, I suppose. And notice again what he's talking about here. He's not saying it's, you know, oh, so you can, how about if I want to do both? What if I want to be isolated, but I also want to be kind of in the world? You can't be in both places. You know, it's a complete, it's fundamental, it's total. It's down to the fundamental level. It's eternal, it's forever, and it cannot be overcome. It's insurmountable isolation. You know, because the more individual you become, the less likely you are to see yourself in others, and vice versa. So, it's a decision. You know, part of the hard part is when if we abandon that approach, and instead we just kind of say, well, I'm not going to follow that, but then we're still angry at people who are sheep. Oh, they're just like everybody else, they're sheep. And again, that's where sometimes the self-hatred will come from. Because we're going to have walked away. We'll have taken the the blue pill other than the red pill, as it were. And then hate people who took the blue pill, myself included. Maybe even going to sleep and forgetting that we did that in the first place. Questions? Comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? Yeah, I was going to say, man, all right. Lay it on.
Does it mean eternal isolation?
Yeah. Yeah, when it tells us in eternal isolation, you can't go back. Happy Thursday? Happy Thursday. It's not so bad. We'll see.